Hi everyone, this is the Tibet trip reflection video. I just didn't want to include in my vlog just because the vibe is quite different. So yeah, so it has been a month since I came back from Tibet, which was also the toughest trip I've ever taken. The air in Tibet was very thin. On the first day, I almost fainted during a photo shoot just because of the altitude. And because I didn't rest enough before I actually went for the photo shoot. Yeah. So even simple things like walking felt harder in Tibet. And later in the trip, when we were visiting Mount Everest, on the same day, I actually got food poisoning. And the flight, leaving Tibet, honestly, it was very terrifying because of the altitudes. So physically, it wasn't an easy journey. But when I think back on this trip now, those difficult moments, although they stay with me, but they are not the ones that stay with me the most. What stayed with me the most from the trip was actually those small observations that I've made along the way. One thing I noticed during the journey was how present faith seemed to be in everyday moments. It didn't feel like something reserved only for temples or special occasions. Our tour guide, a Tibetan, he actually held his prayer beads throughout the journey and turned them while we travel. And it's not in a ceremonial way, it's just something he does naturally. It's kind of like a habit woven into their daily lives. In a way, because it's not just the tour guide that does this, there's a lot of Tibetans we saw on the way. While walking on the streets, they would turn this thing. I know it's something related to their religion, but I don't really know what's the name for it. I'll put it somewhere. So watching that made me realize faith isn't something that is separate from life for people over there. It's just simply part of it for them. And because Tibet is huge, we actually spend hours in the car every day, really, traveling from point A to point B and then to point C and to point D. So during the trip, we also learned that some pilgrims travel for months just to reach Lhasa. Some of them actually walk from places as far as Sichuan, carrying everything they need in a backpack. When I saw people walking on the side of a road where the cars travel on, it was surprising. I've heard of it and seen it on TV before, but I've never actually expected myself to come across one in real life. And honestly, just imagining that journey feels overwhelming. Walking for months, crossing the mountains, simply to pray. At one point, I asked our tour guide something very simple. What do they eat along the way? And he said sometimes they knock on doors, and people would offer them food. So it's literally strangers opening their homes and sharing what they have with the pilgrims. And that sense of trust between people really stayed with me. It just made me realize how powerful a shared belief can be in holding a community together. Even though they don't live close to each other, they're separated by, I don't know, a few thousand kilometers or something. But it just doesn't stop them from opening their doors and help another person in the same religion. There's also another moment during the trip that kept coming back to me. So as we travel across different parts of Tibet, I kept noticing animals. Goats, sheep, yaks. The animals that are built to survive the cold and harsh conditions in Tibet. Even in winter, I saw them grazing across the mountains. And somehow, even in that harsh environment, there was still grass for them to graze on. And watching that scene made something click in my mind. Like, wherever people live, the land seems to provide what is needed to survive. The animals would adapt to the environment. The milk becomes food. Oil from the milk becomes warmth. And life there looks harsh from the outside. But at the same time, it also felt provided for.
1、2、3，干杯！你该讲吗？
And when I was there in Tibet, like standing there in the mountains, I realized that survival doesn't always come from having more. Sometimes, and especially when I was there physically, it feels like it comes from learning how to live with what the land gives you. Being there also made me reflect on the ways many of us grow up. Like many people in Asia, I was always told to study hard, work hard, build a successful life, and just keep moving forward. Keep achieving more. There's nothing wrong with that. Ambition can be a good thing, but when I was in Tibet, even though it's also in Asia and it's part of China, it just felt really, really different. And being physically there made me pause for a moment. Maybe because I'm there as a traveler, but at that point in time, life there didn't seem to be revolving around constant competition. People there are still working, they're still surviving, and they're still living in a very challenging environment. But the rhythm of life there somehow just felt different. It seems like they are more connected to the land, to the faith, and to the community around them. And it made me wonder sometimes, in the places many of us live, especially in cities, we do forget to pause and ask ourselves what enough actually means. Of course, I'm not saying that what I've said here is totally true, but at that point in time when I made all these observations, that was also what I felt. Yeah. And another thing I'm very grateful from this trip was the kindness I experienced along the way. So when I got sick on the day visiting Mount Everest base camp, and then also the few days afterwards, the people around me were incredibly caring. People checked on me, the tour guide checked on me, the driver checked on me, helped me, brought me to the doctors, and they made sure I was okay. Even though for me and the rest of the people on the trip, we were all just travelers passing through the same journey. But the moments like this reminded me that sometimes the most meaningful part of the travel aren't the famous places. They are also the moments of care between people. And this tour is made up of people with different nationalities. There's definitely some kind of language barriers, but it doesn't stop them from showing their care for me and for the rest of the people around them. They also spread a lot of joy in the tour, and it's just those little moments. Yeah, they're just really, really meaningful. Looking back, I don't think this trip gave me a single lesson. Instead, it left me with a lot of small reflections about faith, about trust between strangers, about kindness, and about the idea sometimes there may actually be enough. Yeah. Tibet wasn't easy, but it was real, and I'm grateful that I didn't just hear about it from other people, from the TV show, from other people's YouTube channel. I stood there, I breathed in that thin air, which actually hurts my nose a lot, and I experienced it with my own eyes. And sometimes the most meaningful places we visit don't really give us a clear answer. They simply leave us with things to think about after we leave. And maybe that's enough to take away from the trip itself. So this is like a reflection from my Tibet trip, and I just want to share with you guys. Yeah, that's all. The part 2 of the trip I'll be uploading soon. I'm just still editing. Yes. If you stayed till the end, thank you. And I'll see you in part 2 of the vlog.